In Illustrator we can use linear gradients, radial gradients, or gradients on an angle, and we can specify any angle we like. We can also use multiple colors within a gradient, but to get you used to using this gradient tool, how to create the colors and how to make the gradients, we're going to recreate this very simple exercise. Alright, so you should have opened up your document and have something that looks like this. Our first step is to create the colors that we need. So the instructions here say that we need to have white, black, blue, yellow, red, pink, orange, and green. So we're going to create those separate colors using the technique that we've just learnt in the previous video. Now what I'm going to get you to do first with this document is to change it to a CMYK color mode. So go up to File and down to CMYK and change that. So before we begin making colors, just make sure you don't have none selected, because if you have none selected in your swatches panel, you will not be able to create a new swatch. So you can click on white, but what we're going to do from the swatches panel is choose this little flyout window and choose new swatch, and then we're going to enter some values to create different colors. So the first one we'll create is blue, and I'll just name that blue, and we'll make the cyan 100% and click OK. We're going to create the next color by choosing new swatch from the bottom of the swatches panel, and this time we'll create yellow. This will be 0 cyan, 0 magenta, and I'm using my tab key to toggle through these, and I'm entering 100% for yellow, and I will name the color yellow and select OK, and it will populate the swatches panel one more time, and we'll create red. Red is made from a combination of magenta and yellow. If you drag the sliders for magenta and yellow up to 100%, you'll create a really rich red. So we'll name that red and click OK. Create a new swatch. We'll call this one pink. We may as well just use 100% magenta for pink. And the next one we'll make is orange. Now orange is a combination of which colors do you think? This is going back to primary school for you guys. Definitely yellow, and it's definitely magenta. But if we have too much magenta, we end up with red. So we need to back off on the magenta to create an orange. So I'll say 60% magenta, 100% yellow, and name that orange and click OK. One more color we need, and it's green. So click new swatch, and I'll name it in advance. Green is made up from blue and yellow, which is cyan and yellow. So I'll say 50% cyan, 0% magenta, and 100% yellow, and click OK. So here are our colors created on the side, and I'm going to select all of these colors and I'm going to put them into a new color group. So I'll just call these bright colors, and I'm going to use these individual colors to create some gradients. So open your gradient palette, put it next to the swatches palette so you can see it. We're going to create a square swatch and place it over the top of each one of these template swatches. So go up to your rectangle tool, or M on the keyboard, hold down Shift and create yourself a nice square. Go up to your gradient panel here and have a look. By default, it actually does have a gradient of white to black, which is linear. So we could, by all rights, just select that swatch and click on this option, but it doesn't load it into our swatches panel for us. And we want to load this color into the swatches panel. So I'm going to click this downward facing arrow, and then I'm going to click on this add to swatches icon. That will add a new gradient swatch to our swatches panel. And I want you to double click on it and rename it white to black. So you can see on one side of the gradient slider we have white, and on the other side we have black. Well, that was a bit easy, so we're going to create another one. Instead of drawing a new swatch from scratch, I'm just going to hold down Shift and Option, Shift to constrain and Option to duplicate, and I'm going to create another copy of that white to black gradient, and then I'm going to repopulate it with the blue to yellow gradient once we've created it. So now to create the blue to yellow gradient, all we need to do is click on this blue color swatch and drag it and drop it over the top of the white swatch at the left of the gradient slider, and the same with the yellow. Just drag the yellow and drop it once you see that little plus sign. Now once you have that gradient, go up to the downward facing arrow and add it to your swatches. Double click on it and call it blue to yellow, and then we can select it from our swatches palette and it will populate the swatch on the screen. So let's do the same thing for the next one. I'm going to select this gradient swatch, hold down Shift and Option to drag to make a copy of it, and then I'm going to create 2 new colors, and then I'm going to populate the red and the pink into the gradient swatch. So the red goes on the left side, when you see the plus symbol show up, let it go, and the pink goes on the right side. And then you can drop it into your swatches panel, add to swatches, double click on it from the swatches panel and rename it red to pink, and then select the swatch on the screen and select red to pink. Now the next one will be orange to black. I'm not going to narrate this now because you should know how this works after me explaining it a couple of times. And then the final one we'll create will be green to white. I'm dragging green to one side and white to the other side. Now for the next row we have a different challenge. The next row is telling us we have to populate these swatches with a radial gradient. I'm going to do this the easy way. I'm going to select the ones at the top here, hold down Option and Shift and drag and place them on the top. Probably easier than you think to create the radial gradient. At the top of the gradient panel here we have an option called linear. If we open that little drop down we see an option for radial. Now if we wanted black in the center and white on the outside, all we have to do is reverse the gradient. That's that option there, but this one says white to black and we'll assume that it wants white on the inside. Going along to the next option, we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll just select radial. So we're starting with blue in the inside and ending with yellow on the outside. Select the next one, choose radial. Select the next one, choose radial. Select the next one, choose radial. Now once we have created the radial swatch, we can again drop the radial swatch into the swatches panel, which is a really good idea because you will want to use them again and again, and if you don't have them you'll curse yourself for not putting them in there later. So once you've created them, add to swatches so we can see that we've got them all in here, and we'll name this green to white radial, orange to black radial. Now the very last ones that we're going to create will have different angles applied to them. So what I might do is I might select the ones at the top and Shift Option and drag those swatches down to the bottom and select each one of them, and we're going to enter a different angle in this section here. So this one says a 45-degree angle. The next one will be 18 degrees, so we'll just enter a value of 18. The next one will be an angle of 34 degrees. The next one will be an angle of minus 70 degrees. So you see you can choose an inverted angle, and the next one will be minus 25 degrees. Now there is one other thing I'd like to show you about how to adjust these gradients, because you don't have to just use this gradient box up here, and it's sometimes much easier to actually do it this way. The letter G on the keyboard will activate your gradient tool, and you can actually move it left and right to position the gradient within the shape. If you hover over the right hand side of it, you can rotate it, and as you're doing that you'll notice that the angle adjusts inside the gradient box. Another thing you can do is move the position of the center point to one side or the other, and that also is affected inside your gradient panel. So it's really quite a handy way to be able to manipulate the gradient. And if you just drag from left to right over the top of that gradient again, you can adjust its positioning. You can drag in any direction and it'll just reset that gradient for you. So have a go at that, because that's quite handy. I found it quite useful anyway.